All right. Well, thanks for joining me. We're going to be playing A Winding Path. And I have here with me, in order on my screen, anyways, we have Christian, David, and Florian joining me.
Hey,
Okay, so A Winding Path. Let's start. Oh, we had someone on the team play. All right. So we were discussing a bit before that the game started development just about 2 years ago.
yeah, that's right. Yeah, it
All
was
right.
pretty much a side project. So development all in all took about 1.5 years, which seems long for like the tiny game that Winding Path is. It's about 2 hours in length, I think. Um, but yeah, it was decidedly a side project where we could invest just a couple of hours per week into it. I actually took a couple of days of work at some point to be able to spend more time with the development myself. Um, but Christian and Florian were working full time, so that's where the fairly long development time comes in and makes sense, I think.
Mm.
Also, when we started the game, um, we didn't have much. We had the art style. That's where it all came from. And I actually have a box here next to myself with a lot of the scribbles that I did on paper. That was like one of the early early drafts for the general art style. And
Mm.
100% of the art that you see in the game is drawn on paper with a pen and then scanned in and pieced together virtually. Right, and we just had the art style, and we had no idea what kind of game we're going to make out of it. So the first months, first half a year, maybe even, we were just trying things. We were experimenting with the pacing that we'd like to give this game. We tried different ideas for combat, both melee combat and ranged combat. The ranged combat is actually it survived. You can later in the game there's an archery range that you can do some bow shooting. But yeah, whatever we did, we found that we want this game to be very peaceful and calm and relaxing, and no amount of combat fit with this until at some point we decided to just make it a yeah a pacifist game where
Yeah.
you're just walking around helping people solve their problems basically.
And when we were talking beforehand, you mentioned that the three of you are programmers by trade. Is that right?
That's
Yeah.
correct.
Yeah.
So all three studied programmers with years of experience.
Mm.
We met at VW and doing some heavy 3D application programming for the big company. And so Florian and David used to make games on the side as well. I did as well, but those guys, they were already um, friends and working together for a couple of years at least when I joined.
Mm.
And I was just super happy to have people with the same mindset to find them at my workplace. And I would say we hit it off pretty well from the get-go. The idea was charming. We realized we worked together well, and we really liked just the vision that we had for this cute little game that we wanted to make. And for me, that was basically what drove me throughout the 1.5 years that it took to finish this.
Yeah.
And of course, there's some ups and downs with everything. And being programmers was comes with its own challenges because you're so used to making systems and whatever, and you kind of lose yourselves at times fiddling with the stuff, and then you end up okay in a place where you need to refocus again, try to find a new way forward. And I mean, as David said, that was super interesting for me as well because it's the first game where I didn't have a rough idea of what it was going to be in the end. So when we started, we really had this one scribble that we started with, and a rough idea that it was about wholesomeness, and it should be something that brings joy and happiness. But that was it, and we had no idea. And as David said, we tried different things, and with everything we ended up liking. We integrated that into the game as best as we could, and then we had to change so many things on the way. And yeah, the story was evolving. There were characters added. There were whole different areas being developed, and that was super exciting just to be part of. I just remember also at some point we were trying a very different movement style. So when you move around in the game right now, that's super calm, and he's not really in a rush. The character is not really in a rush to go anywhere. And at some point, I remember us having like a super agile player character running and jumping around, but it was still the same environment that you're all basically the same environment that you're walking through now, and that was so not fitting that we ditched it for a good reason, but still so funny. So there's plenty of those tiny things that we tried that didn't make it, but that really helped us get a better idea what the game was going to be. And that also helped us being developers, not having the experience in maybe creating audio and visual stuff.
And well, those two that you just mentioned, the visuals and the audio, I really wanted to know about, because I was so pleasantly surprised when you mentioned before that, well, yeah, the three of us were programmers, but to me, the first thing that really caught my eye was, of course, the art style, the visuals, and then the music and the sound effects, the how minimal, but like it's really expertly done. And I was wondering, David, you were talking about that you had the first scribbles, and who was responsible for the art? Was it one person, or did everyone contribute?
I think the art was 99% me. Like the doing. Of course, there's a lot of iteration and back and forth and feedback where people tell you what actually looks good and what doesn't.
Yeah.
So that was all like a group decision. But the actual doing of the art was me. It was pretty crappy in the beginning. For example, you can see, it's not the greatest example, but you can see this tree here. That's how I used to draw trees in the beginning, right? And if you go out of this cave for a bit, there are gonna be trees, and they look quite a bit better. So a lot of the art actually got a redraw towards the end. I mean, these little bubbles, they are the original stuff, but yeah, you can see the difference between those trees you see here and the first tree that I ever drew, basically. So there is a lot of experience that was gathered throughout this process. Yeah, a lot of trial and error.
And what about the audio? Because I think, as you all mentioned before, that there's such a sense of calmness, and the sound effects are used so perfectly. Like in this room, you just hear this nice crackling of the fire, or the when you open the doors, or when the text comes up, there's a little scribble. I think there's so many little touches that bring so much depth to the world that players might not even pick up on the first time, because it's so passive, but it's done so well. Who was?
And I think you can take a lot of credit for that.
I mean,
a lot of stuff there.
I think it's a bit of the same as with the art style, and where the essence of it is being a programmer with an interest in audio, and or with an interest in scribbling. In David's case, the minimalism really comes to our advantage there.
Yeah.
And so it was basically, I mean, it's easier to make a minimalistic audio and visual style work than in a hefty 3D action game where there's so much going on, and so
Yeah.
the whole game basically came to our advantage, and the way it ended up being. So with with the audio, that was we integrated a ton of field recordings done by other people, credited in the end, where credit is due, and that helped us a lot to get a sense of atmosphere and scale to things. And also, as you said, there's some we realized once we had those snippets in that there were some things missing, that the place still felt empty, and that's so in a similar way as we approached gameplay and story and level design, we also approached audio. So it's basically the same principle over and over again with small iterations, and we realizing where something was not feeling right,
Yeah.
and then going and fixing that, and then reiterating again, and that helped a lot. And so I would say in the same way that David said that he was, I don't know if I was 99% of the audio work. I have no idea actually, but basically
A lot.
it was a
A
team
lot, yeah.
effort. Less, if it was that way, it was a team effort because we really everybody gave feedback and had ideas that one of us then ended up implementing in whatever way. So yeah, that that's I guess that's why you get this nice feeling of completeness, because we spent so much time on these things that we felt were missing. And because our game isn't a huge game in scope, still not too small actually, we ended up almost breaking our backs with the amount of work that we put on. But yeah, I would say it was doable and we made it. So that really helped us.
Yeah, I think sorry,
Yeah. Go
extending
ahead.
on what Christian just said is like, I think this approach of building a very systemic game where we have like a lot of like atomic pieces that we can pile together to make mechanics out of this and extend them over the levels is something that did us a lot of good in the long term, because we were able to kind of start introducing elements into the game, building them out, polishing them, and then kind of building more and more complex patterns out of those presumably simple elements that we constructed.
I can definitely understand that as well. That you're right with the world feeling more alive with these animations, because now there's the sound of the birds chirping, and I could only imagine if I could hear these birds but everything was still, it would feel like there's a disconnect here, because I can hear that the world is alive, but what I'm seeing is not telling me that the world is alive. Everything is stable. So I think those little touches, as you said, really does bring a lot to life.
I think it's also a consequence of the gameplay of the game being so minimal, right? If you have like a bullet hell game or some action game or something, you have to put attention on the gameplay and making the feedback for your actions juicy and great. But in a winding path, there you don't act as much. You walk around, you explore, you discover, you just enjoy the environment, and that is what needs to be good at giving you information and some sense of some sense of that being great, you know. I guess if we had more gameplay, or if we were a more gameplay focused game here, I guess we might have put less attention to these details because we just wouldn't have noticed them as much.
And we would not have had the time, because polishing would have gone to gameplay more.
Yeah.
I would say.
Yeah, a lot of effort went into the writing. A lot. I'm not sure about the number. It's like 50,000 words or something.
Really? Wow.
Yeah, it's a big chunk of work, and I mean, as much as that information helps, we're all developers, right? And the one thing I notice is, sure, you can write, you can draw stuff on paper, and if you spend time with it, you might even get good at it, and the result can be great. And personally, I'm very happy with the outcome of all of that. But at the same time, I have to say, it was a really dragging process at times, because you're just not good at what you're doing.
Yeah.
Right? Or I was just not good at what I was doing. Writing is also, at least in large parts, I took care of the writing. Everybody chipped in there, and we had a lot of back and forth. But yeah, me personally, I noticed, okay, I can write good stuff, but it just takes me a lot of time to get into that mindset and to actually make it really good. Whereas when I went back to programming tasks, I just noticed, so hey, this is what I've been doing for years. I can do that. I can
Yeah.
estimate how long it will take. I
Yeah.
just know what I'm doing.
It
The
comes
other process
naturally.
was, yeah, the
Yeah.
other stuff was way more, way harder. Way.
I wanted to
I
know as
guess.
well, what were some of the inspirations for the game? I think I hit this scene and I saw quite this big mountain, and sorry if I forget. I think you mentioned you're all from the north of Germany, and I think southern Germany is more mountainous. Is that right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's true.
But so anyway, that the long way to get to what were the inspirations for the game?
I think that's an interesting question because from my perspective, I'm not sure if I really had like the idea of this game should be like XYZ or something. I think what went into this, like we all have a history of playing games, and I think everyone kind of brought in ideas from what they liked in the games that they played. And then I think for me, a lot came actually from the pretty clearly defined art style that we had. So we started with a scribble that David had of this house with his bubbles, and I do recall like us standing in the kitchen a few days before we actually started the prototype, and you showing me this image and be like, hey, let's try out how this feels when it comes to life. Basically, I think having this limited art style in a positive sense, like a very clear idea of what you can do, and then this idea of building a story around this that evolves around being a nameless hero in this world, but not doing like the classical hero things, but instead like trying to mend this world and finding like comfort, finding friendship, which kind of was something that we felt like everyone could use a bit in the times that we were developing this game.
Yeah.
And I think this brought a lot of this ideas, like what kind of characters do we want to have, what kind of jokes do we want to tell in the game, what kind of ideas we want to push in the game, and things like that. And for me, I think the game kind of inspired itself, as cheesy as it sounds right now.
Yeah, I was also about to say it's largely self-inspired, if something can be self-inspired, but it was really, the basic premise was the art style, and this sort of, I mean, it's not a modern setting, right? It's not exactly a medieval fantasy setting or anything, but it definitely has this sort of antique touch to it. It's a little
Yeah.
bit detached from modern stuff. I've been reading a lot of, I don't know if you know the author Clark Ashton Smith. He
No,
was
can't say.
He's an American author, and he wrote alongside Lovecraft for the Weird Tales magazines and that sort of things. And he always has this, he has a style that I think at the time inspired me a lot, and still does, which is, well, it's old writing, so it's definitely not modern. Always a bit detached from the mundane, it has this sort of melancholy to it. It uses very nice words. So I've read it in English. It's not easy to do for me as a non-native English speaker. But it uses very beautiful words, and it chooses them very deliberately. I think that's something that inspired me personally in this game. But also, as Flo said, we started with a sketch and we built something, and from there on, we sort of discovered what the game would be, and we removed everything that would distract from this this sense of exploration and this calmness and this peace that we wanted to convey to a large extent, I think.
Maybe to add just a tiny bit from my perspective, it might have also been inspired by escapism, heavily inspired maybe. I mean, it's an escapist game, so
Yeah.
it's meant to just be a relaxing experience that you can play for a bit and then feel different and just relax basically. And it might have had something to do with all the pandemic stuff that was going on while we were developing. I'm just guessing. I'm not sure actually. But I might have had the need to escape the reality that was my life at the time, and be in this more happy, more simple, calm and slow-paced world, and happy choices and memories maybe. So that might have had an influence and might have been an inspiration to the whole thing as well. I mean, it's still not okay. There's this one work or several pieces of work that we based this off that inspired us to make this, but still, maybe it explains a bit more than why we felt the need, or why I felt the need to make a game like this.
Yeah.
In the times we had.
Hey David, there's a great quote that just came to mind. I think it's attributed to Michelangelo, who made the sculpture of David. That's why I'm bringing it up. Well, he was asked, like, how do you make this great sculpture of David? And he's like, yeah, just chip away everything that doesn't look like David.
Yeah.
And that's largely how I think A Winding Path was made. We did stuff and we just chipped away everything that doesn't fit, and that's somehow how it ended up being like it is, I think. Yeah, no, I just wanted to bring the quote largely.
Yeah, it does feel very very lean, you know, like everything that is there belongs there, and it doesn't feel like there's this extra feature or extra mechanic just because it's fun or it could distract someone. It feels like everything that is here belongs here. But I'd say that our time is nearly up with the Let's Play for A Winding Path. I wanted to ask beforehand, if there's anything else that the three of you wanted to mention or talk about before we end?
I don't know. If you end up playing A Winding Path, please hop on our Discord server and tell us how you like the game. In any case, we hope those people that end up playing it enjoy their time and get something full out of it. Hopefully an experience that sticks with you for a bit even after you've played the game. I think that will be the ultimate compliment for me. But yeah, that's just about it. The game is out there, and if you feel like it could float your boat, then there it is.
Yeah, and the game it's on Steam. Is it on any other platforms?
On itch.io as well.
Okay. Yeah, well, perfect. So thank you so much, Christian, David, Florian. This sort of game is exactly the sort of game that I'm interested in. So after we're done here, I know I'm going to continue, and I'll reach out to you guys and let you know how the game went for me. I'm really enjoying it, and it's really, really beautiful.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
All right. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.